The next time you're coaching a lunge to a new patient, I want you to implement this. Have them perform their lunge, and then at the end of it, ask them what they were thinking about. 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to say, I wasn't thinking about anything. And that's okay. The idea here is we want to start to increase awareness. Before you can give your patient or client the new strategies and tactics and movements, they first need to know what is their go-to way, what is their go-to method, and how do they position and understand what their body is doing. So in today's video, I want to go over 3 tips that can really help you maximize your ability to coach the lunge. The main idea is to help your patient or client get in the mindset and provide tools so that when they want to compensate, they know how to not. The first tip is to focus on the back foot. After your patient or client tells you that they weren't thinking about anything, ask them if they had to choose, were they focusing on the front or the rear foot? Chances are they're going to say front foot, and this is when you educate them that you want them to shift their focus to the rear foot. Specifically in the rear foot, you want to maintain a vertical heel. When you maintain this vertical heel, it is going to help them move in the appropriate trajectory. The front foot focus tends to get excessive knee flexion, although excessive knee flexion is good when it's done in the right way. But you start to get an excessive forward momentum and you move in the wrong trajectory, and then most people are starting to complain of knee pain or an awkward feeling. When you shift back to the rear foot, you allow them to maintain a vertical heel, and that's going to help them move in the good form, the good trajectory, and start to develop power the appropriate way. Tip number 2. Elevator, not escalator. Now that your patient understands the rear foot is where we want to focus, and now we want to get them to understand the trajectory. This is when you ask them, hey, would you want to be on an elevator that is moving side to side or straight up and down? They typically will say straight up and down. And then you follow that up with, if you're at a mall and you're on an escalator, how does that escalator move? They typically will say a more horizontal trajectory. This is where you tell them, when we lunge, we want to move in a very vertical or elevator-like fashion and not an escalator. This elevator or vertical trajectory is going to really ensure that they're going through the proper movements during their lunge. Tip number 3 is everyone's favorite, and that is don't chicken it. So at this point, they understand to focus on the rear foot and they understand the elevator trajectory. Now they need to understand how do they execute that. They execute that by not chickening it. And this is where you ask them, how does a chicken move? Most people are familiar with the bobbling forward and backwards chicken motion. What does this really represent in the fitness and movement world? This is spinal flexion and extension, which is a way to compensate in order to gain momentum. Now, when your patient or client is in front of you lunging and they're not tired, they're not holding weight, they typically will avoid this. But the number 1 compensation when things get hard, when they've done a lot of reps, when they're holding weight, is going to be excessive spinal flexion and extension as a way to continue their lunge. This is where the chicken comes in. All you need to tell them is you cannot chicken the lunge when you're performing it. This works really well, and you will see a really good response to your patient or client's lunge when they're fatigued and not compensating through it. So the intent of this checklist is to help your patient understand how to not compensate. You are giving them strategies for them to understand which foot to focus, proper trajectory of the movement, and how to avoid compensating when they're fatigued. So if you want to learn more thought processes like this, then I encourage you to check out the PT Growth Academy's online course. This online course is completely free to get started. You will earn CEUs and you will learn a redefined approach to your coaching.